By popular request, today I'm going to be sharing 3 fabulous projects to try out with your 5th grade artist. Hey there, if we haven't met before, my name is Katie Jarvis. I'm a K-6 elementary art teacher and I teach right here at a Title I school just outside of Washington, D.C. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 projects that you may enjoy doing in your art room. Now, I got the inspiration for this video from you. I recently made a video just like this for kindergarten and some projects to kickstart your kindergarten art year. And in the feedback from that, both on Instagram, here on the YouTube community tab, I heard that you guys are looking for 5th grade lessons. So I'm excited to share. A project that I like to start the year with is a realistic shoe drawing. Now, this is a project that I originally think I found in the magazine called Arts and Activities. I don't even know if they still publish this magazine. In college, my library used to have bound books with all of that year's Arts and Activity magazine inside, and I would check these out and I would photocopy ones that I liked. And this lesson caught my eye like 23 years ago, and I've really been doing it whenever I've taught upper grades ever since. It's just one of those really big fan favorites. So they're drawing a realistic picture of their shoe, which is a lesson I'm sure you've seen before, but to show the scale, we're going to be adding mini people climbing on and interacting in the shoe. Now, to start students off with drawing something realistic, it definitely intimidates them. I don't really love drawing, so it intimidates me too. So one of the things that I suggest to them, and a lot of them take this suggestion, is they take their shoe off, of course, but they set it down on the paper on its side. And then they take their pencil and they trace very, very lightly around their shoe just to give them some guidelines to get started. Now, they will pick up their pencil and hold it at an angle as most of us normally do. That's going to take the pencil underneath the shoe. So an outline like that's not going to be very helpful because the shoe is going to end up smaller. What I have them do is imagine that they are a robot or they're like a machine and they hold their eraser pointing straight up at the ceiling and then they trace around the shoe. Now, what you'll need to remember is that they need steps in the project so that they can feel like they will be successful and that they can ultimately have an awesome drawing at the end of their shoe. So I explain to them how I start. After I have that outline, I put my shoe on the table. So I'm looking at my shoe. I don't want to spend a lot of time drawing some little small like eye hole for my shoelace and getting into a lot of detail at the beginning because I might back up and realize I drew all those details in the wrong spot. So I explained to them that I put the shoe on the table, I kind of back up, look at the whole shoe, and I make light sketch lines for any large areas of the shoe. So maybe a little rectangle where the little shoelace panel is. Maybe I make a line at the bottom where the rubber part of the shoe is. Any giant color changes in the shoe, I would want to sketch those out so I can see the shoe as a whole. Once I have that, then I'm going to go in and start adding a higher level of detail. I got more success from students when I explained to them the types of details they should be drawing. So I pointed out to them different textures on the shoe. It might be little notches at the bottom of the shoe. Things like that, they can also count. So they can see, oh, there are 6 notches on the bottom of the shoe, so I need to draw that on my shoe as well. Anytime where they see like a mesh panel on the shoe, or a change in color or a change in material, they'll want to draw those things with a lot of detail. You also have to watch out because a lot of times students will, just like a stick person, draw a shoelace with just one line. So you need to demonstrate for them using 2 lines so that you're drawing a very thick looking shoe. Now, because of the way that we've traced it, students will often forget. They'll draw the front part of the shoe and they'll spend a lot of time doing a really good job on that, but they'll forget to draw the back part of the shoe that you can see. So the part that makes it look like your foot could go into the shoe. So you have to point out to them that line that needs to be added. Also, the shoe that we've just drawn is kind of just floating in air. So I'll demonstrate to them how to make it look like it's sitting on a surface versus like floating on top of it. Drawing that, line underneath it would not be correct. The line's going to go even with the shoe. They can add in shadows, and we just kind of go over this quickly, that they could put shadow inside the shoe. So the dark part of the shoe where you'd be putting your foot in, around the shoelaces, there's some shadows, and definitely underneath the shoe as well. Over on Teachers Pay Teachers, I'm going to share with you, but I do have my students plan out the little mini people before we start drawing the shoe. So I have a paper where it has 6 different sections and they doodle out 6 different people. We focus on not making stick people, but making shape people. And the size is half the size of their fingers, so it's quite small. When we ultimately color them in, we're going to use different colors of markers. We're not going to color them all one color. Something else, because these people are going to be moving, hopefully, and doing different actions, you need to point out to your students that it's not acceptable to put blood or weapons in this artwork, remembering that our audience is all the kids that are going to see the artwork in the hallway, our kindergartners and first graders. We don't want something in our project that's going to scare them. Additionally, because these people are so tiny, we don't want them to add words, or at least I don't have my students add words. I think that they need to do their job as an artist of drawing this beautiful shoe drawing that people want to kind of come in and take a closer look at and then see these people and enjoy what the people are doing. But as an artist, they need to do their job of showing what the people are doing. The people should not just be standing there really boring and holding still. The people should be doing things. And I encourage them to add props, things like skateboards and parachutes my students have done in the past. They've added a lot of really fun things. And the people can be interacting with the shoe. If the students choose sitting on it, sliding down it, climbing up it on a ladder, they will come up with some really great things. But I think it helps them to practice that first on a planning sheet. And then ultimately, once that shoe drawing is done, they refer back to that planning sheet and then add those people in. I teach in a very diverse school, so I do not do projects specifically about holidays. I often will do projects about seasons. And in that fall kind of Halloween-y season, I will do a project about candy. So that's something that everyone can enjoy. What we do is ahead of time, I have printed out, and you can find these all over on the internet, like on Walmart.com, Amazon has great pictures. Some people actually collect candy bar wrappers and scan them in on the internet, so you can just print those out. But I print them out in color and I laminate them, and then I've used these for years and years. So students choose their favorite candy bar or two, and we take tracing paper. So they are not really drawing this, but they enjoy it and it keeps them busy. And ultimately, this is a printmaking project. So what I'm grading them more on is the printmaking techniques, not really on the drawing. I do a grade on composition for this. So they take the tracing paper, and I am doing this the same size 4x6 as what we're going to print this on, which is a Novart Presto foam. This is just 4x6. It comes in a pack of like 100 sheets, so it's really inexpensive. I will often have my 5th graders make 2 of these. Just because we have an hour for art, they have plenty of time. So we have one day where we're creating these stamps, we call them. So we take the tracing paper, set it on top of the candy, and they will trace the letters and then the main things that are on the candy. Skittles is a really fun one to do, sweet tarts and things like that. They will draw the outside edge of the wrapper, and then and we try to do it like not straight like this, but to make it at an angle and have, some of it on there and some of it completely off the page. In any empty spots, we will just hand draw in candy that's sort of like fallen about, kind of like a piñata exploded type of thing. Then they're taking the tracing that they've done on the tracing paper, and we tape it down to the foam. Then they're going to trace it with a pen. But before they do that, this is probably the trickiest part of this. Because you're transferring letters, you have to trace it. You can trace it forwards, but when you create the stamp, you got to make it backwards. So then when it prints forwards. So it's kind of a good skill to teach your students, but it's a little bit complicated for them to think about at first. So as you're taping these down, I will sometimes help my students with this, and we'll say, okay, look, this is forward, this is backwards. Okay, let's tape this down. And we tape it down to the foam. And I do use name tag stickers for all their artwork. So I put their name tag sticker on the back. Then they begin to transfer the drawing from the tracing paper to the foam by using just a really inexpensive blue ballpoint pen. And it could be any color pen. I don't know why I just said blue, but you get what I'm saying. They will trace it and press really hard on there, and then they will remove the tracing paper. I usually have them cut the tracing paper off. You don't want to bend this foam because it would make a little mark where they bent it. So I have them cut the tape off of the foam, and then they trace it a second time directly onto the foam with that pen. Then the stamp is complete. So that would take us the first day, composing how these stamps are going to look, first tracing them with tracing paper. And again, we usually make 2 of this size. You could also use this, the printing foam comes in other sizes, so you could do a much bigger thing if you chose. But we make 2 of those, and we get them transferred on to the foam in the first class. The second class, they come in, and then we will print their stamps out. Now, what I do to kind of level up printmaking for my 5th graders, because they are still using the foam like they may have done in the younger grades, is in 5th grade, they're allowed to mix the ink. So we talk about using 2 colors of ink side by side that work well together. So we might take pink and yellow because in the middle, it's going to make orange. We don't want to pick 2 colors that might make brown or a dark yucky color in the middle. We want bright colors, that remind us of the candy. So we'll start off often with 2 like neon colors, and it will make a fun color in the middle. So as they're rolling the ink out, and I typically will use foam trays or foam plates for this. It's a little bit harder to find those recently, I've noticed, but I do buy the foam trays from School Specialty. They will roll the ink out and then roll it directly onto their stamp. And I set my printmaking up as centers. I actually have a whole video about how I manage the printmaking. They'll explain a little bit more in detail if you've never done printmaking before, or if you've never done it as centers. So imagine in the front of my room, I have like essentially 8 tables, but they're in groups of 2. So it's like I have 4 big tables. In the front 2 tables of the room, that's where people are squirting out their ink onto the trays, rolling them out with the rollers. Then they come to the back of the room. So they're carrying their stamp. They're leaving the ink in the rollers. And in the back of the art room, we have what I call like the registration, where they're lining up their stamp so they know where it's going to go. And sometimes I'll even, for younger students, call that like a picture frame. So they put their stamp in the picture frame. Their stamp is like pointed up towards the ceiling, but it helps them to line up where does the stamp go, and then ultimately does the paper go that they're going to print on top. So it's almost as if they're making a sandwich. It's going to be that little picture frame, that registration, the foam stamp is there, and then they're putting a piece of paper on top. And then we do have brayers or rubbing tools where students would go through and rub and get the ink off of their stamp and transfer it onto the paper. And we try to make 3 copies of each of our stamps. Sometimes we will have 2 classes where students have the opportunity to move around and make their prints. Then I'll also have them reflect with an exit ticket at the end of the project. That's something that I do often. This one doesn't have a planning part to it, but there is a lot of prep work getting that stamp ready. But on the end, they're reflecting on, do they like their prints, and what makes a good print, which is something I think you really need to stop and teach your students. It's also really fun to make a poster of like what a good print is. And I take like those little binder clips, clip it directly onto my drying rack. So some of the common mistakes that you'll want your students to try to avoid as they're printing is to make what we call like a ghost print, when it comes out really, really lightly. Now, when my students have a little oopsie or a mess up, we ask them just to learn from it. And so they throw those mistakes away. So if they have one that comes out very, very light, like a ghost print, they're going to throw that one away. They're going to sign any that they think look really good. I don't have my students number them. I know that that's what real printmakers do. When I first started teaching, I did do this and make like a series, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3. My students became really overwhelmed with this for some reason. And it would just be like, they kept asking me, what number am I on? I was like, I have no idea what number you're on. Just like, keep going. So for my students, I just kind of have them keep track of 3, but we don't have them write any numbers on it, just signing their names on good ones. So a ghost is a mistake that they wouldn't keep. If they get like fingerprints on the edges of the stamp, those are ones that they would throw away, like on the copy if there's our fingerprints on the outside edges. If it doesn't print straight, so it kind of prints like off center and crooked, we're trying to make these straight and even with our paper. So if they're off center, those are ones that they would also trash and not keep. Another example is if they used too much ink. So the ink would be going into what we had drawn with the pen on the candy wrappers. It's the hardest mistake because then the kids will have to go to the sink, they'll have to wash the stamps off, and they'll have to dry it and then start over with the ink. If they're going with the same colors, they can print and like put ink, make a print, put ink, make a print. If they switch colors, which I don't allow the other grade levels to do, but 5th and 6th graders, I do allow them to switch colors. So they might make an orange and pink one and then come back and make a yellow and turquoise one. So they would be washing those off in the sink. The foam really holds up pretty well to this. They just put it in the bottom of the sink, take a little paper towel and rub it on top of it. If the water hits it, most of the ink comes off easily already. So that is a really fun project that students have responded to. It's fun to hang up in the hallway because it's bright and colorful and fun. Another engaging lesson that I do for 5th graders that I kind of save towards the end of the school year, just when like things are crazy and I just want something very simple for my 5th graders to sort of balance things out. I do this world architecture playground lesson. Now, for me to pull this out and to share this with you was just so easy. I was like thanking my past self. I got these last year at Michael's. These are scrapbooking containers, and I just put all my resources for my projects that have a lot of resources inside of there. So me pulling this out and sharing it with you was super easy. This is a lesson that comes from my school district. So people have asked me before if I have a curriculum and if I have lesson plans that I have to follow. My district has lots of art teachers. I think we have over 250 art teachers. I'm in a huge district, and we have amazing resources. We have a really great curriculum, and there are some lessons provided, but there's a lot of flexibility in how you do those lessons and if you want to do those exact lessons. So I really enjoy it. This is a project that I just think works really well with the kids. But even if you're a teacher in my district, chances are you might do this lesson in a completely different way. So it's always kind of fun to see that. What the lesson is on the first day, I have a planning sheet where they identify different elements of the playground. So things like a slide, a climbing wall, monkey bars. Those are elements of a playground, little parts and sections of a playground. Then they need to take that and connect it to something from world architecture. So I think this is art projects for kids. They have amazing resources. So like a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And I do a lot of different photos, but also some drawings step by step. And I think the trick for this is just if you have a bunch, then the kids don't all make the same thing. The artwork doesn't look all the same in the end, but they have like a resource to look at. So they're not continually being like, what does this look like? Can I look this up? We have like one-to-one laptops, but just for art, I don't usually have them bring their laptops. So I like to have a lot of picture resources for them to look at, feel more comfortable. I mean, that's how real artists work. So they would take something like the Eiffel Tower and then think about maybe a zip line, okay? So maybe they want to have the Eiffel Tower and it's a zip line, and the other side of the zip line is the Washington Monument. So they have to say where in the world they got the idea from, and they have to say what element of the playground, so the zip line, and then they draw a little sketch about what that would look like. And we're doing this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these elements of the playground, 6 different places in the world, and it can be America. There's different places there, but I do encourage them to think back. Our 3rd grade curriculum is really rich in different kinds of cultures, so they've got some experience there. A lot of them choose ancient Egypt, which is something that they studied in 3rd grade, or White House and things that are near us here in DC. And they love making those connections to places they've been or buildings and things they've seen on TV, and that knowledge they already have of a playground. So this is just a little sketch and a little fill-in page on day 1 as they're kind of collecting information. Day 2, they're taking all 6 elements of the playground and they're putting it into a bigger drawing. Then that drawing, we trace it with a Sharpie. And then I'll stop and teach them some different marker techniques. So this is something that I have on my Teachers Pay Teachers, where it is just a blank techniques chart. And I will demonstrate, I have like a YouTube short where I demonstrate different marker techniques. And then they have a chance to try it on their own. So they don't have to match the exact colors that I use, but just how I apply the marker on the paper. And then they are to use all of those marker techniques somewhere in their drawing. And that is a really successful way to do a project where you focus a little bit on techniques, build up their confidence, give them some options. They kind of have a menu of things to choose from, and then require that they use some of those within their artwork. I do this with painting. That's on my Teachers Pay Teachers. I do this with markers, with crayons. And it really is helpful to making artwork that is connected to them. So they're choosing the techniques that they want, and you're helping them to grow as artists. You're not all copying the same kind of technique that you're using everywhere within the artwork. Another art project that I definitely want to share with you that is a huge hit with my students is a character abstraction. If you'd be interested in doing that in your art room, you're going to want to watch this video next.